morning, Vietnam. What's going on, guys? You guys are popping in the chat already. I see all the regulars. We got Taylor, we got Euthanasia, we got Melaforta, CRX, Minoan. Jimmy Jihad is here too. What's up, guys? It's good to see you this morning. I told you guys yesterday that nicotine pouches are bad. I tried another one just afterwards. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna knuckle through it. I paid for the thing. I've got 160 milligrams of nicotine to get through here, and it'd be a shame to spoil it all. I did another one, and it just I don't know what it is. It just makes my mouth feel all shitty. It's gross. It like makes my tongue kind of ache. I don't know. I don't like it. So we're gonna try. I've only done the Rogue Wintergreen before. We're gonna try Rogue Berry. I'm honestly I didn't even know there was a berry flavor. So when I saw it, I just kind of reflexively was like, oh yeah, that one. After I bought it, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna be any good, but we're gonna find out. So we're about to insert, and we'll get started. All right, guys. Do me a favor, hit the like button. We got 43 in the house, 13 likes. Hit the like button. Let's pump this one up in the algorithm. Also, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, all those sorts of things. And then if you're watching on Twitter, do me a favor and go over to the tweet and retweet it to get in front of some other people. It's just at the top of my timeline right now. And follow me if you aren't already at Real King Pilled. We have got, is this the new opening ASTROLABE bit, testing new dip pouches? Yeah, that's maybe that is the thing now. I was doing it because I literally just opened the tin in front of me. Oh man, and one of them's jacked up. It got pinched in the lid. I'm not putting that in my mouth. That's what she said. Tweety Bird says your lighting is a bit dark. That's on purpose. That is intentional. It's an intentional aesthetic choice. And I didn't even know doing it that I was presaging the dark MAGA phenomenon. That was these are unprecedented times. Pete coming in with the dad joke. That was well played, sir. Yes, apparently I was presaging the dark MAGA with my background, and I didn't even plan on it. We're going to talk about dark MAGA here in a little bit, but got a few other stories for you guys this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Biden. We're going to talk about Andreessen Horowitz. They had a very interesting podcast that I just listened to. I've got some thoughts that an interesting person shared on that subject. Going to talk about Biden. Going to talk about hold on here. Let's make sure. Yeah, okay. Going to talk about the medical emergency that he has suffered, and then we're also going to hit on. Make sure I got all these open here. Yeah, I do. Okay. We're also going to hit on the Heritage. Heritage is doing their own investigation into Trump's would-be assassin. So they've got some interesting details on that. We're going to talk about we're going to watch some clips from Kimberly Cheatle's testimony yesterday in front of Congress. There was some Congress women actually who were getting pretty riled up, and so I've got some of those. Going to talk about that. Going to talk about a J13 commission. Going to talk about Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin is now being introduced to the Blue Anon folks. The Blue Anon folks are getting real worked up about Mr. Yarvin. So he better watch out. Not even kidding. He's probably, if he's got the spidey senses, he hasn't been working on making himself inaccessible to the general public. He should probably be working on making himself inaccessible to the general public. Because you can already see them creating the narratives of him as the like court advisor. But yeah, so we'll get to that here in a little bit. Before that, we're going to start off, as we always do, with a nice fun one. This is just a nice, simple, fun one. Let's laugh.
So sad. It's really just tragic because I I took my love and, well, I took it right down. I said, button post, not posting back. And I climbed a mountain so tall, so high, I turned around, I could barely breathe, it was so high. And I saw all my reflection in the snow-capped little hills there, so cold. With a landslide or some other natural force brought me down. Now I ask you, Mr. Mirror, mirror in the sky, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Can the child in my heart, if you're still in there, rise above it? Can we? Can I sail through the changing, all so changing, the ocean tides with the moon waxing wane? Can I handle all the seasons, winter, fall, spring, summer of my life? I don't know. I don't know. We won't know. Nobody knows. No one will know. No one will know.
I'm very glad we get to live in a world where a fat, like a chubby, long-haired ginger can mash up Stevie Nicks and Donald Trump. It is a good world. Speaking of Donald Trump, shout out to friend of the show, Douglas Archer, at Archer of the Yard on Twitter. He is the most criminally underfollowed person on the internet. Let me see if he's gotten, I've shouted him out a few times. He's getting up there. Go follow at Archer of the Yard on Twitter. He is just consistently tweeting bangers. But he replied to me with this, speaking of, regarding the rare Trump self-deprecating clip discussed on the Astrolabe, it brings to mind this sketch from SNL, which now seems like it's from an alternate universe. Now, I'm going to play this. There's a very good chance in the 1 minute that I play this that YouTube is going to strike it. And they're going to recognize that it's something that's copyrighted. So if you're watching the replay of this later and you want to actually get the clip, it's probably going to end up being muted on the YouTube video. It'll play on the Twitter stream. Such is the world that we live in right now. We just have to deal with these things as they are. So here's this clip.
The guy's here to fix the leak on your solid gold faucet.
Send them in.
Funny, what stands out to me about that video, first of all, is it's an absolutely terrible Trump impression. I don't know if he's like just intentionally doing it really badly, but is this like something, just commentary on him, or is this a like Trump hadn't been embedded in the public consciousness so much at that point as he is now? Because now, like I played the last thing, there's a million people on the internet doing Trump impressions. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them aren't very good at all. The guy singing was pretty good, especially for singing. Like, doing an impression is one thing. Doing an impression and singing the impression is a whole different thing. But yeah, so that's the first thing that stands out, is like, that's just a god awful impression of him. But then you just sit there and you look at this guy like on SNL making jokes about gay guys and making fun of his own hair, and that man is now like the most powerful single human being in the world, the one who can move the world the most with anything that he says. It is a wild world that we live in, and I love every minute of it. Moving right along here, speaking of the most powerful man in the world, throw back to this masterpiece.
She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
She's like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the funniest thing about this is that Trump I don't think he even realized that he misunderstood her, or maybe he did, and that's why he said what he did. But she said something about she's so shocked, and then she said, "I'm not, but thank you, Mr. President." And he said, "I know you're not. You're never thinking." I played the clip of him the other day of him with Jim Acosta, and I'm always going to remember this time frame with fondness. When we got to sit there, and maybe we're going to get it again. I kind of don't think that we're going to see this version of Trump in the same way going forward. But, this is, at the time, like middle of Russiagate and all of that, it felt like really dark and unsure. Like it was kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next? And I can't believe we're living in this like tumultuous time. And now you look back at that and you're kind of like, man, everything was so, we were so innocent and naive. Trump is all youthful and vigorous, and these are such light times. Which, if you sit and think about that, that means, what was this? I don't know, 2017, 2018, something like that. Is this about 6 years ago? So 6 years from now will be the middle of 2030. And if it's going to be worse in 2030, then that means we're going to someday look back on the current times as like, oh man, we had no idea what was coming. Things were so light and easy then. And things got so much worse after that. And then, I'm pretty sure it's from COVID. Okay, so if it was COVID, so 4 years ago, so 2028, same thing. It's possible that by the time 2028 rolls around, we're going to be like, oh man, things are going to be riding high. We're going to be feeling a lot better. Everything's going to be, the energy's going to be up, and we're going to feel optimistic and on the upswing. That's entirely plausible. It's very possible for that to be the case. So if that's the case, then that's something that's something to be white-pilled about. If you think, oh, the same trend is going to continue, so 4 years from now, we're going to be looking back on this like, oh man, if only we could go back to those the halcyon days of yore when the president was nowhere to be found, and there was had just been an assassination attempt and all this sort of stuff. But I in either case, the message is very clear. Take advantage of this time to build toward that time. Sorry, that was I didn't expect that one to come out. In either case, take advantage of now. If it's going to be better then, well, fuck, don't worry about any of the bad stuff. Sit down and start building. If it's going to be worse then, well, then take advantage of the time when it's good. Don't push it off until the time when it's worse. I think for some people, 4 years from now is going to be much worse than now. For other people, I think 4 years from now is going to be much better than it is. Both of these realities are going to continue playing out. We have the two movies, or the one movie playing on two different screens, and it's like two different movies basically from the way people are watching it. I think that we've hit a break in the timeline, and I think this is going to persist. I don't know at what point does it come back together. Like when the timeline splits into two different movies, does it ever come back together again? Is there ever some sort of resolution? Or does it just seem like there is because when we read our history books, they describe this as like one continuous trajectory and we just kind of take it for granted? Like we read history in sort of the same way as like we look at the condition of the grass outside. You just sort of like look at it and you're like, oh, there's green grass there that's a little bit long and probably needs to be cut. And there's some dew that's on it. We kind of have this natural tendency to just read history the same way. But history books are just stories. It's just, I mean, the line between fiction and nonfiction is pretty hard to find with respect to history. Because anytime you're reading a historical account of something, you're reading someone's, the story that someone tells themselves after looking at the different data points that they're drawing from, which is going to be informed by all sorts of different things. So it's necessarily going to be subjective. Additionally, I think one of the things that we've seen through the whole COVID and into now, like this whole process, and even starting with Trump, something that's been really obvious is the notion that the winners write the history books is not exactly correct. In fact, it's generally the losers who are writing the history books. As you go back further and further, the guys who write the history books are never like the alpha chads. They're always the sort of, I don't know, Weasley little dweebs. The scribe physiognomy, I don't know. So Winners write the history books. I'd say the losers write the history books. Don't just accept the history that you've read. There's many things that have been lost in that history that we have yet to discover, and we get to write them ourselves. So let's keep pushing through here. I've got here's a white pill. Powerful Mutual, Dr. John Carter, at Martian Wordlord. He says, we're now in the timeline in which the world's richest man comments approvingly on an Arctos post. The missed shot broke the temporal prison. All things are now possible. And this is the one in question. Deeper Thrill says, we must build glorious things again. Tweeting an Arctos Journal tweet with this really cool image. Like, I don't know. Archaeofuturism is the term for it. I don't even know how you would describe it apart from that. It's like, you got like the ruins of ancient Greek architecture, and then, but it's framed in kind of like a space sort of way. And it looks like it's on the moon, perhaps, with the Earth off in the distance. This is a really cool aesthetic. Really freaking cool aesthetic. And one of the other guy who's, I think you could say Trump is the most powerful man in the world and Elon is the most powerful man in the world. And I think these are both true. Like, both and. Elon, most powerful man in the world. He is commenting approvingly on this vision. I don't know about you guys, but I like this vision. I'd love to pursue this vision. Euthanasia says that aesthetic is super Atlantean. Yeah, very much. So here's the original, just so you can see it's actually, let me zoom this out. Kind of hard to see. There you go. There's the whole image. Got like comets falling down or something up here. This is a really cool vibe. And just yet another example of Elon Musk constantly signaling to our guys. So speaking of guys signaling toward our guys, I listened to this conversation yesterday between Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, the founders of Andreessen Horowitz, and they have this. We've read in the past the thread that Mark Andreessen wrote about the little tech agenda and their concern about little tech, about startups. I really, really strongly recommend that you go, if you want to understand the motivation behind, like both the primary motivation, and you can tell in some of the stuff they say and some of the stuff they don't say. Like, if you're, I don't know, if you could pattern match, you might be able to piece some things together beyond the strict words that they're saying. But this will give you the motivation for the PayPal mafia, the Silicon Valley crew, whatever you want to call this group of tech CEOs, gray tribe. They're pointing very clearly as to what their motivation is. And there's kind of a surface level story here, which is, deregulation, and we want to make sure that, we want to be thriving and prosperous, and we want to grow, and they're standing in our way, and we're very concerned about their tax policies. And there's like that overarching story. But you can also tell with some little drips that they make here and there, and kind of a running theme that they're not emphasizing as much as they're kind of leaving it unsaid, is their deeper concern, which is, I'll say in one word, military. Every single one of these things that they're very concerned about, that they've been at loggerheads with the Biden administration on, ultimately has massive military implications. So I'll just say that, like that. Keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking at the PayPal mafia, when you're looking at these CEOs and the different people from that culture, and the urgency with which they're talking about these things. They are not simply representatives of themselves. They're representative of deep interests. I would say they themselves are deep interests, but they're representative of still deeper interests who are not necessarily ideological about the current state of things, but the competency crisis and the idea that the government has been taken over by a bunch of incompetent radical ideologues, they're very concerned about that. which is their job to be. So yeah, when you're a lot of people are looking at this and they're just seeing the PayPal mafia guys, but these like elite coalitions don't work like this. It's not just like, oh, these guys are just going to kind of come out on their own and just, they're wealthy and powerful. And so just by the sheer dint of their wealth and power, they're going to try to throw their weight in the ring and pick the VP. No, like whether implicitly or explicitly, they are also representative of deeper interests who see them as a vessel for being able to execute change in a difficult circumstance. And I don't know that those types of relationships are necessarily explicit or just implicit. But I don't know. Am I hinting hard enough here at what's going on? So this guy, Purple Cabbage, this is great. We can get some great thoughts from Purple Cabbage on Twitter. Highlighted this podcast, which is where I saw it. Said, learned a lot from the episode. Specifically, tech billionaires constituted not the elite, but the subaltern elite, allowed to do their thing in exchange for tax revenue and philanthropy. So we're going to talk about this term here in just a minute. Biden administration broke the deal. The subaltern elite revolution is here. Clinton and Obama would work with the tech oligarchs on their particular tax and regulatory issues. There was give and take. The Biden or factions of the Biden administration are determined to kneecap them now. So this is something that they talk about pretty extensively, and you can hear Andreessen getting really upset about it. And Horowitz has to kind of like, all right, now settle down a little bit, multiple times. In the past, they're like, we've been very close with Democrat politicians, with Republican politicians. We've been close with both of them. We've worked with them. There's good people that are very willing to listen to us and relate with us in good faith from both parties. But what changed is with Biden, they're just getting stiff-armed. No engagement whatsoever, open hostility. And they're like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you understand the absolute magnitude of the issues that we're dealing with here? One of the things they talk about is, as they're dealing with the issues of regulating AI, which ultimately comes down to regulating math, talking about like what type of math you are and are not allowed to do. And he said they were in a conversation with the Pentagon about this. I think it was with the Pentagon or interest from the Pentagon or something like that. And they were like, well, you can't outlaw math. And they were like, oh yeah, we can. And so that's what we did with various types of theoretical, like advanced theoretical physics. We classified it, and it's not available to the public, which is interesting. So they're presumably the most explosive ideas, theorems, propositions, understandings from advanced theoretical physics are classified. We don't have access to them. And these guys recognize the stakes present with all the different things that are implicated by AI. From a commercial perspective, from a domestic perspective, from a foreign policy perspective, which then ties into energy, because you need a tremendous amount of energy to be able to effectively operate with AI. So these are like massive. This is the way they see this is we're at a transformational point in the human species akin to the introduction of the internet, and probably more than that. This is probably the most transformational effect or moment in a very, very long time. And that capacity is being stifled or redirected by the existing presidential administration and the interests it's representing. Now, there's a lot of deeper reasons for that, and these guys obviously are not going to come out and talk about all of those things on a podcast. They're going to talk about the surface issues, but I'm telling you, those deeper interests at play, they're clearly, obviously aware of them as well. And if they aren't, the people behind them are. So their concerns about this they're talking about essentially we have treasonous people running our country who are selling us out to foreign interests and ensuring that we're kneecapped and we're unable to protect our national interest. That is absolutely a point that I can align with these guys on. We can hash out the details later on, but if they see that, that's a good thing. This is what's motivating them. Continuing with the thread here, says there's been a lot of signs before now, like Biden deliberately snubbing Tesla on EV recognition. Tesla and SpaceX should be national champions, but are not. Buying Twitter was a very big deal. It's allowing this revolution to coalesce. I think, like, there's an extent to which these guys are normies. It's very weird. You have, let me stop screen sharing for a minute. These guys are more intimately acquainted with the system and more deeply embedded in it than any of us ever will be. They've got presidents on speed dial. They've got, the Speaker of the House. They have them over to their house for dinner regularly. Like they're as plugged in as you possibly can be. And yet at the same time, they still have a very normie view of the political system. They still buy into a lot of the normie ideals. So they recognize that there's a major problem, and they're following their nose to try to solve that problem. They're not really being directed by ideology. They're being directed by pragmatism, but they're trying to retain the ideological explanations for it. But as you continue down this trajectory, I know this for me, everybody that I know, as you've continued down this trajectory, you're drawn by pragmatism and you try to retain the ideological convictions. But eventually you begin realizing the ideological convictions are just bankrupt. There's no justifying them any longer. If they can't withstand pragmatic scrutiny, if a crisis point is going to force you to have to abandon the ideological points, then your ideology is shitty. You need an ideology that you don't have to abandon in a time of crisis, which is not an ideology at all. But anyways, so this is what's motivating these guys, and they're talking in very strong terms about this. That they see this as exactly what it is, like a serious crisis in governance. They also talk extensively about the tax policy, the tax on unrealized capital gains. And that's where Andreessen starts getting pretty upset. That's one of the points. Because he's like, how could you possibly be, they're not just like floating this out as just sort of like a thing. You're like actually serious about trying to do this. There's actual serious legislative weight behind this tax on unrealized capital gains. And he lays out very clearly exactly what would happen with the implementation of something like this. It's going to start off at 25% above 100 million, and before long, it's going to be 75% above 500,000. And they're like, this will absolutely just crush innovation. It'll crush startup culture. And in their mind, in the narrative that they're telling each other, themselves and each other, startup culture, the ability to bootstrap a company and innovate very quickly, is necessary in order to speed run some of these crises, to get out ahead of them and cut them off. You cut them off with innovation. They see technology as key to growth and development. Now, I don't think technology is the key, but I do agree with them in their assessment on what the implications are of attacking innovation and invention and commercial development from all different angles. The only reason that a group of people would try to attack it from all different angles is if they're explicitly trying to destroy the nation. That's the only motivation for that. To put all those different policies together into one basket that you then impose on the nation. The only reason you do this is so you can destroy the nation. So I don't care that these guys may not necessarily have my exact preferred diagnosis of all the different details of the situation. They clearly understand the gravity of it, and clearly the world that they want to drive toward, where they unburden the ability for American companies to innovate, and they reshoring manufacturing, massively opening up the energy industry to allow for expansive growth, bringing back flexibility to industry and allowing us to build our way out of the crisis we've gotten ourselves into. This is an existential reality. They recognize that, and that's good enough for me. I'm not going to be super picky. And to go beyond that, like, you've got Andreessen explicitly hyping Burnham and the observations that Burnham makes. And I'm pretty convinced at this point, like, you've had the thing for a while where Andreessen, like, follows everyone. He follows, like, I don't know, 30,000 people or something like that. So all sorts of little accounts get follows from him. They're like, what the hell? What's going on here? Is this just some algorithm or something? I'm pretty sure at this point that he is actually following our guys. And he follows thousands of people, either so from a kind of a normie perspective, just so he's like, oh, I'm just getting the perspective of everybody, or it's cover. You can't go full cancel culture on him and get some journo that's like digging through his follows and trying to guilt by association him as easily. Like, if he's following 500 people and those 500 people are overwhelmingly like dissident right people, then that's a lot different from following 30,000 people and following all of them. But I know I'm not going to say I don't think I have the okay to say some of this stuff publicly, but I know for a fact that he is not just following, but is subscribed to our guys. He's giving money to our guys by subscribing to their offerings. So he's deeply, deeply aware of our circle. Okay, so then let me see the rest of this. Did I open it? Okay, yeah. Okay. Share screen. So he says, for what I mean by subaltern elite revolution, hat tip to this thread here, or this podcast. I haven't listened to it yet because I want to find out more about this. I wasn't aware of this term subaltern elite, but I've got this one bookmarked to listen to along with a bunch of other things. He says 2016 was a populist revolution. 2024 is a populist plus subaltern elite revolution. Powerful combo, and solidifies the political reorientation that's been ongoing in recent years. Continuing, he said, someone said, are you using the term subaltern in the same sense that ephanon or phanon? I don't know what these things are. Like untouchables, severely mentally ill, etc. And he said, no, just in the sense of lower status. Picked it up from Michael Cuenco in this interview in his article in American Affairs. And it says here, the passing of each economic regime entailed the rising and falling of rival sets of elites with distinct and clashing material interests. Their battles were essentially won or lost when an economic regime once established was given a chance to prove its merits by delivering tangible results in the form of material prosperity and development, or victory in war. If a regime failed to deliver, it would be vulnerable to being overthrown and replaced by a new elite, usually drawn from an ambitious ascendant portion of the existing subaltern elite. This ascendant elite would be armed with new ideas, new values, and most important of all, new institutional blueprints and designs with which to remake the economic and political regime in its image. This was the rough template of U.S. history up until the post-war era, when intangible subjective cultural cleavages replaced material economic ones as the primary political division between Americans. So based on this, I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. He says to the interview, so I'm going to do that, and then I'll probably weigh back in on this subaltern elite idea. But Purple Cabbage says his basic argument is that culture war has postponed the usual subaltern elite revolution by many decades. My speculative claim is that this deferred revolution is finally upon us. So ordinarily you have like kind of like the lower class of the elites. And I'm curious if subaltern elite is just the distinction made by Pareto between governing and non-governing elites. You have the governing elites and then the non-governings, and they cycle through. But we've had the culture war has been a means by which the governing elites have locked the non-governing elites out of the room. And so the non-governing elites they're not like, well, this is wrong. This is my ideology says you are not allowed to do this for this reason and this reason and this reason. No, they're like, motherfuckers, let us in the room. How dare you? How dare you try to lock us out of these processes? Who the fuck do you think you are? Look, and then adding to that, look at all of the devastation and harm that's being brought about by you. Like, this is more than enough to justify a complete elite overthrow of an existing system. So there are plenty of if your worldview is so low resolution that you don't recognize how varying and diverse the regime coalition is, and that these people are like, there's a lot of projection here where people have convinced themselves of these overarching conspiratorial, like Dr. Evil level conspiracies to completely take over the world. And those do exist out there. But not every single person who appears to be participating in that sees the world the way you do. You're projecting your own worldview onto them and assuming that they're self-consciously acting toward the ends that you're afraid they're acting towards, but they're not. We've lived in the world now of memes and watching people be ideologically possessed and watching what institutional inertia looks like and how powerful it is. We've been in this world for a long time now. If you aren't like coming online and realizing this, and you just naturally assume that every single elite person that has ever touched or talked to a Jew or been to Bilderberg or spoken at Davos or whatever, if you assume that those people are all monolithically aligned against you simply because of these different incidental anecdotes, you're not going to make it. You are going to force them to become aligned against you. You're going to manifest them as a coalition against you. When in reality, there's plenty of pressure that's driving that coalition apart. That coalition is absolutely reeling right now. There's no way around that. There's no way that this has been all according to plan. No one would make a plan like this. If they had the capacity to just take over the world and just stamp out elections for the foreseeable future, they've just got everything all the power at their fingertips. They wouldn't be bumbling through this like a bunch of nincompoops. There is no one in charge. It's very comforting to assume that there's actually some deep dark force there that's actually in charge of everything. But there is no one in charge. The crown is truly in the gutter, and there is a scramble for it. Stop manifesting power and coherence to your enemies that they don't have. It is pouring rain outside right now, and I can hear some thunder. So if I drop out, it's because the power went out. And typically when it goes out here, it just blinks for like 5 seconds. So I've still got a whole bunch of stuff to do. So if I drop off, then be on the lookout. I'll be popping back on again shortly. Jihad Jason says, academic agent has said many times the regime doesn't play 4D chess. It's too big to do that. Yeah. There's too many variables at play here. Like, so, well, we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. I don't want to jump the gun and get out of order with the stories that I've got here. So hold that thought. Euthanasia says, when you consider the factional conflicts and how all these weird events are just networking and access gatekeeping, you can start to see bits of power being brokered or sold or used. Right. And you got to track that power, see where it's going to, who's buying it, and what their motivations might be, which means you have to take into context all the other moves around them. And like these are extremely complex circles. And ordinarily, these circles operate, they for the sake of pragmatism, and just for like a utilitarian purposes, they consolidate into very few circles because it's easy to just kind of mosey along like that. But we're in the time right now where they've fractured. It's about as complex and I don't know, nuanced now as it's been in a very, very long time. All these different circles of influence that are fracturing apart are going to recoalesce around something. But they're not going to recoalesce around what they were before. They simply can't, because that is what led to the fracturing in the first place. They're going to recoalesce around something different. And that something different is TBD. It's up in the air. It's not already determined. It's not already decided. This is the the doomer perspective, the black pillar perspective, this is the fatal error in it, is that they are assuming the future that isn't yet decided. And the only effect that you can have by assuming a future that isn't yet decided is contributing toward deciding that future that way. It can fall out any number of ways from here going forward over the next few years, next few months to next few years. We're going to get some moment where we walk up right to the edge and then everyone stops and they all look at each other and everyone moves at once. It's probably going to be around the inauguration in January like it was last time. It could be before then. These are completely unprecedented times, and assuming that the story is already told, assuming that the answer is already has already been made, is actively voting for that future. So if you don't like the future you're voting for, stop voting for it. Here's a haha. Let's do a haha.
My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment to address some of the hateful shit you've been talking about me. Many of you have said I am suffering from brain worms, or that I have applesauce for brains. Well, I won't mince words, so here it is. Fuck you. You're all a bunch of faggots. End of quote. Repeat the line. So enjoy President Cackles or President Booty Juice. I really don't give two fucks anymore. Biden out. My fellow Americans.
I want to live in a world where you actually get a statement like this from the president. Maybe once we have our first Zoomer president, we'll actually things will actually be that way. But look, it's stunning how quickly this stuff is improving. It's still obviously like the voice is almost undecipherable. You almost could not tell. There's a little blip here or there, but you almost can't tell that it's not actually his voice, which is relevant to another story going around right now. But his lips, the upper lip is the place where you always mute this. The upper lip is the place where it's always the hardest. You always get the most uncanny valley. But it's getting really, really close. It's getting close enough to where you can almost bury some of this in like low resolution stuff. Like for whatever the clip has been distorted or something like that. It's close enough that we're going to get some crazy deepfake stuff happening in the near future. We may have already, who knows? So this here, we'll pump through a couple stories. The letter that he wrote, if you'll notice, we talked about the signature on the last episode. But you'll also notice there's no presidential seal on the letter, which is, in historical terms, the fact that we had the president of the United States, the sitting president of the United States, withdraw from the election, the upcoming election, like less than a month before the convention. And he did it by tweet and has it on a literally just a Word document. They don't even have the seal. So, by Peter Paradise said, I still can't get over the seal not being used. I think it's because whoever posted this without Biden's permission didn't want to go to jail. It says, whoever knowingly displays any printed or other likeness of the Great Seal of the United States, or the seals of the President or the Vice President of the United States, or the seal of the United States Senate, or the seal of the United States House of Representative, or in connection with yada, 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 all the way down, shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both. I think that this is probably a pretty good theory. Because the types of moves that are being made now are not well orchestrated, planned out well in advance. This is people adapting on the fly under pressure. That's why they're making really simple little mistakes like this. This isn't the black pillars which would have you believe that this is an expression of their great competence and the fact that they don't even care. Like they could just rub it in our faces. This is insane. Nobody operates this way. The person who posted this, the person who wrote this up and posted this, sees themselves as an aggrieved victim, beset under great amount of stress and pressure. They have the prospect of what they see as the entire American people turning against them and an incoming administration who will make their lives a living hell. This is not the work of confident people who have everything all sewn up. This is some movie shit here. So for those of you who I guess maybe aren't extremely online, who are maybe not following all this stuff closely, I don't know how many of you guys there are, because there's plenty of you that I see who are following this really closely, but then I don't know for the rest of you, and for those of you who don't comment. So we'll do some remedial stuff just to keep you guys in the loop. Let me check the comments here real quick. Yeah, Brent Taylor says the next plus or minus 100 days, the governing elite will be in their weakest state. Correct. Euthanasia, the actors of the faction can play 4D chess, but the regime, the summation of the factions, cannot. Right. And once they begin having to try to play 4D chess, like on the fly, adapting to stuff in real time, where things are changing as quickly for them as they are for us, we're getting the lagging indicators of how quickly things are changing, but they're changing really quickly for them. Eventually, the people people have to start making snap decisions. And those snap decisions can't be coordinated with committees and heads of state and all these different proxies and representatives. People just have to make a decision on the fly. This is in large part what was happening on July 13th. You have all these different. You have HSI and you have secret security and you have local police and you've got sheriffs and you've got all these different people, and they're not all on the same bandwidth. So they're all communicating through proxies. Then you've got the protective detail on Trump, and you've got Trump's campaign, and you've got all the different people who need to be in the loop, and they weren't all on the same wavelength. They were all communicating through chains of proxies. So in a time of crisis, a time of emergency, the distinction between intentional malevolence and negligent malevolence becomes kind of meaningless. There's no point in trying to hash it out and determine, was this an explicit orchestrated conspiracy, or was this just a conspiracy of incompetence? In either case, the result is the same. The people responsible need to be held responsible for what happened. And so they're going to be replaced. It's going to happen by someone, whether they're replaced by just more patsies or whether they're replaced by different serious people. That's up for debate, but they're going to be replaced. Let's see. Straight Buster says, can't believe Biden dropped out the same way Bands announced they fired the bassist for being a creep. Bro really dropped a screenshot of his notes app. That's great. Screwed Up Rebellion says, I'm only in the loop because of King Pilled. Well, good. I'm glad. I'll keep it up then. Jihad Jason, I'm a normie who stumbled in here while looking for Pokemon lore videos. Douglas Charles says the lack of a seal may be because it's an act of his campaign and not an act of his presidential office. That's a good point. That's interesting. I don't know if I'm not all up to date on what the implications of this would be. So, yeah, I don't know if the president is withdrawing his campaign, then is that a legal act of his presidency? Well, no, I guess it wouldn't be a legal act of his office. It's somehow like the president is now having to be simultaneously a representative of his office and also representative of his campaign. And these are like legal distinctions that are really silly. We're gonna read something about. We'll tease it till the end, but we're gonna read something that talks about the absolute silliness of this system. So some details of what's going on right now, what we know as of when I went live. I had to open up Schachtel's Substack here. I've never heard of this guy. I don't know who he is, but he has me blocked. So I had to find his thing on Substack instead of Twitter. It says exclusive, President Biden suffered an undisclosed medical emergency during his time in Las Vegas, police sources say. Air Force One, quote, flew so fast the plane shook on its way back to the East Coast. When President Joe Biden began his campaign trip in Las Vegas last week, everything seemed to be running as smoothly as it could for an 81-year-old president in physical and cognitive decline. The day before he abruptly left town, Biden delivered the keynote address in front of a packed crowd of almost 5,000 people at the NAACP National Convention in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Mandalay Bay. Interesting. On Wednesday, Biden was scheduled to deliver the keynote at the Unidos U.S. annual convention at the MGM Grand, with thousands in attendance anticipating his arrival. With the venue located right off the Las Vegas Strip, the president's security detail and motorcade required massive outside support from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. President Biden did not appear at the convention nor any of his scheduled events later that afternoon. Instead, he left town, departing Las Vegas on Air Force One for Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where he remains today. Since that trip to Las Vegas, President Biden has announced over social media that he would not seek a second term as president, while throwing his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris for the Democratic nomination. President Biden has not been seen in photos or on video since he touched down in Delaware Wednesday night, though he did participate in a phone call with Kamala Harris earlier this evening. The president's communications staff and doctor said the president had tested positive for COVID-19, declaring it was the reason for the cancellation of his schedule and his change of plans in Las Vegas. Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the president's White House physician and a family business partner, said Biden, quote, presented this afternoon with upper respiratory symptoms to include rhinorrhea, runny nose, and non-productive cough with general malaise, signaling that the president had nothing more than cold-like symptoms. We are told a very different story. We have verified that several of the core elements in Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk's viral X post from Monday are indeed true, according to law enforcement sources. Now, let me look this up real quick. I want to see who Jordan Schachtel actually is. I saw a number of people highlighting him as having the best, the best breakdown of what was going on right now. But I don't actually know who he is. And he has me blocked, so I'm not super optimistic about him. But let's see here. American Institute for Economic Research, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. Does anybody know, is he like, it says entrepreneur, journalist, researcher, publisher. Is he a lib? Is he, he's taking courses in counterintelligence and cyber statecraft. Well, that's very interesting. From Monmouth Institute of World Politics. So is he seems like a spook. He's someone that's set up to publish stories, to craft the narrative, but I don't know on behalf of whom. It is interesting that he's crediting Charlie Kirk here. So Charlie Kirk's tweet says, got a weird lead on a story that people should look into. I got a call from a source close to Las Vegas Metro. The official story was that Joe Biden's trip was cut short last week due to COVID. However, according to this source, U.S. Secret Service informed Las Vegas Metro that there was an emergency situation involving Joe Biden and to close necessary streets so that POTUS could be transported immediately to University Medical, which they began to do in earnest. Then, mysteriously, there was a stand-down order, and the U.S. Secret Service informed local Vegas PD that they were going to medevac POTUS to Johns Hopkins, which they presumed meant fly him back east ASAP. Apparently, the rumor mill in the police department was that Joe Biden was dying or possibly already dead. I didn't think too much about this lead, seemed too wild to be true, but given that Joe Biden has been out of public sight for days and dropped out of the race via an X post, and his brother James indicated health was a factor, I'm beginning to grow more curious if COVID or something else has been more serious than reported. And so he asked for more information. So Jordan says the dossier obtained independent testimony from over a half a dozen law enforcement officers who participated in the president's security detail and others who spoke from firsthand knowledge of the incident that unfolded that day. For this story, we worked with Turning Point Action to secure the testimony of several sources and vet their legitimacy. Officers working the president's detail described that Wednesday as chaotic from the very start. President Biden was already way behind schedule before the incident. Several sources said things really went haywire after he'd been present at a famed local Mexican restaurant called Lindo Michoacan, where he was doing the rounds, shaking hands and greeting donors. Then suddenly, when he was scheduled to deliver the Unidos US speech, all hell broke loose. Several law enforcement officers on duty that day were informed over the radio that the president was dealing with an unspecified medical emergency. Far from a case of the sniffles, this was sent out on encrypted police airwaves as if something akin to a 5-alarm fire had broken out. Our sources estimate that it was easily hundreds of Las Vegas metropolitan officers and employees who heard the broadcast live, so a curious media shouldn't have a problem reporting any follow-ups to this story. The dispatches made clear that this was much more than a mere change of plans because it set into motion so much of their on-duty emergency response apparatus. Radio dispatchers responsible for coordinating with the president's detail requested an immediate surge of law enforcement resources into the area, both to secure the vicinity and to expedite the president's movement. According to these law enforcement sources, the president's motorcade was initially planning on heading to University Medical Center, which was located about 2 miles up the road from the president's position. Police answered the call, rapidly deploying their in-the-box emergency squads to facilitate the reroute to the hospital. While researching for this story, we found that the local NBC affiliate KSNV confirmed last week, without much publicity, that UMC, quote, was on standby after being alerted about a possible medical issue with President Joe Biden Wednesday afternoon while he was visiting Southern Nevada. But the president's team decided not to bring him to the hospital. The plans changed in rapid succession once more. It was then relayed over to on-duty officers on the president's detail that they would need to clear an express route to Harry Reid International Airport. The police assigned to the president's detail and the emergency in-the-box squads then redeployed the resources to getting the president out of town as fast and as safe as humanly possible. Emily Gooden, the senior White House correspondent for the Daily Mail, reported that on the journey back east, Air Force One, quote, flew so fast the plane shook, arriving in Dover in just 3 hours and 48 minutes. Several of the officers we spoke to said this was indeed being reported and acted upon as a full-blown medical emergency, insisting that a simple positive COVID-19 test would not have warranted such a drastic, massive response. Only President Biden and his inner circle seem to know the truth about what exactly happened last week in Las Vegas. Hopefully the public will be made aware of the events that necessitated his emergency departure from Sin City. Thanks again to the fantastic team at Turning Point Action for securing some of the sourcing for this story. Kate J says, Jordan is one of the chosen group with Con Inc. ties. Interesting. Okay, so doesn't strike me as a neocon, but Jordan went full hive mind after October 7th. Could explain why he has you blocked. Did great work on exposing COVID lies, though. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, seems like, I don't know. Was he a DeSantis guy? This strikes me as a DeSantis guy profile. Slosher says stroke, something like that. Yeah, honestly, I have no idea. I don't have any clue what it could possibly be. I have this other story here. Reporters at Red State have confirmed this story with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department sources. An additional source, not a medical person, in a position to know, tells me that Biden had stroke-like symptoms but did not elaborate as to what those were. But when the doc traveling with Biden determined it wasn't a full stroke, they could treat on AF1 en route to Andrews, the motorcade diverted to the airport. According to this source, it's believed Biden had a transient ischemic attack, or a TIA. About TIAs, it's a short period of symptoms similar to those of a stroke. It's caused by a brief blockage of blood flow to the brain. A TIA usually only lasts a few minutes and doesn't cause long-term damage. However, it may be a warning. About 1 in 3 people who has a TIA will eventually have a stroke, with about half occurring within a year after the TIA. Often called a mini-stroke, a TIA can serve as both a warning of a future stroke and a chance to prevent it. And don't forget this, Biden has had 2 aneurysms and nearly died in 1988 from an aneurysm. This would be the last time that. Whew. You guys hear that? You guys hear that that clap of thunder? That was one of those that sends a little shiver down your spine. So this is the last time he was seen.
Asked questions by reporters. He told them, I am doing well. He gave them a thumbs up. He is now going to be isolating at his beach house. And we did note he wasn't wearing a mask there when he came down the stairs. But it does appear once he gets in the car that he puts that mask on. David.
Puts the mask on. It appears that he might be getting a little help just getting into the car there. Hard to make out through the rain what exactly is going on there. But it does look like certainly that the president's feeling the effects of early in the stages of COVID, and many of us have been there. So we do wish him a speedy recovery. John Carl, you're reporting earlier on World News Tonight, getting some pickup tonight across several news outlets. You reported on this meeting that Chuck Schumer had with President Biden. This was Saturday, and it was...
So this is after that flight. What this tells me is that... that he was alive at that point. I don't buy the body double stuff. Like, if they were going to have a body double, like they wouldn't be going through all of this. None of this is like, this is the least parsimonious way to go about all of this. If their goal was just to remove Biden from the picture, this is clearly him. They could, if they were going to have a body double or something, they wouldn't be like, okay, now what we need to make sure we do is we get him really struggling to climb into the car, and we're going to get the video from the right angle, make sure that gets published out there, and like, get out of here with that. This is very obviously him. So I think, I don't know whether this was a TIA, and I don't know if he'd had a TIA, would he be, would he have recovered enough to be able to like walk out to the car? Like, they wouldn't be bringing him out on a stretcher or something like that. Would he have recovered that? I don't know. In any case, what's clear to me is that he's genuinely in bad health. They don't have complete control over this situation, and they're having to make decisions and then change their mind on the fly. Like, that's the biggest thing that I think comes out of this. This isn't a planned, coordinated exercise. They're like, okay, we're going to make this decision. We're going to University Medical. All right, everyone, tell everyone, get it out there. Emergency, emergency. We're going to University Medical. And then they're like, hey, wait, actually, no. Actually, we're going to fly back east. We're leaving. We're getting out of town. Redirect everyone. Oh, okay. Redirect everyone. Over here. This is not planned and coordinated. This is people who are adapting on the fly to a situation that's completely out of their control. I think that's the takeaway that you can take from this. You can speculate about all the other stuff. Exactly what it is, you know, I was genuinely wondering before I saw this if he's even alive still. I think he was at least alive at the point that they got back, but now, I don't know. It's an open question. This was supposedly, you could tell they did this as like a proof of life. Kamala has this, they have Joe who calls in, and she's talking to him on a call. And watch Kamala's body language in this video. See if you, well, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it with no audio. Just watch her body language with no audio and tell me what you guys see. Okay, so I'll give my take while you guys are writing yours out. It's like a neon sign to me. This woman is stressed the fuck out and genuinely in fear. You can see the way this is going to sound funny. You can see the way her nostrils are flared out, the tension in her nostrils, the tension in her eyes. The way her neck is, she's got a lot of tension in her neck, and she's grimacing. Like, all of her nonverbals are all signaling, I am in fear for my life. Like, I understand exactly what's going on right now. I'm extremely uncomfortable. I'm scared. Like the Simpsons meme, Chuckles, I'm in trouble. Yeah, frantic. Yes. This woman is barely holding it together. There's nothing that's like exultant or excited, and holy shit. There was another one. Yeah, right. As in, fuck, I'm going to be the president. Like, she wasn't prepared for this. This wasn't the plan. This isn't something that she's been set up and ready to go for. Like, they're adapting on the fly. Now, I'm going to play the audio on this so you can hear the clip, and then I'll give you guys my opinion on this. Everyone else is talking about it, so I'll weigh in too.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And everybody here does. We really, you guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill.
We love Joe and Jill, as she's shaking her head. These are like subtle things, but they really matter. What someone is talking subconsciously when they're saying something and they're shaking their head, there's like, you can like shake your head in disbelief, but she's obviously lying. She's obviously lying. And this is well documented that Biden and Harris can't stand each other. There's a really good conversation you should listen to. Tucker Carlson talked to Jack Posobiec yesterday. I haven't long had like a super high opinion of Jack Posobiec, but I was impressed as hell with him talking to Tucker. This is very, very good. And both of them are well connected. Both of them they can actually speak from sources close to what's actually going on and give some insight on what's going on. And one of the things they talked about is how there hasn't been a president and a vice president who liked each other in as long as they can remember. And then they quickly qualified. They said, "Oh, hopefully that's going to be different going forward." I thought that was interesting. I wonder if that was, they're just talking about the past and not necessarily thinking about the implication for the future, or if there's actually maybe tension or something between Vance and Trump. But yeah, here she's very obviously lying, which kind of colors the rest of it. She's freaked the fuck out, and she's obviously lying about liking Joe and about talking to him regularly. So everyone jumped on this where she says, Joe, I know you're still there on the, it sounds like she's about to say the recording, but keep listening through the whole video.
President's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call.
I know you're still on the call. So people, okay, so it's a recording. It's not actually him.
And we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And we do, everybody here does.
So then she catches herself and she starts, they're like family to us. Yeah, they are. They're like family to us. Look at that profile right there. That's what she's feeling. That's like the clearest example of what's inside coming out.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe. Oh.
Okay, so after watching this a whole bunch of times and just thinking about what is most likely with all the people involved, I think that's actually Joe. I think that's actually him. I think they actually have him on a call. They're actually talking to him. I don't know why she almost said recording. Maybe she didn't say recording. Maybe she was trying to say something else. But I think that was actually him. The reason for that is that's not the only thing he says, and he responds to something she's saying. So he responds contextually to what she's saying in a way that couldn't be just like a recorded conversation or something like that. He responds to something she's saying unplanned. I don't think she's a good enough actor to be able to like have this whole thing scripted out, and they're like reacting to all of this in real time. So you have to tell me like they put together a script. And she's like reading a script and they've got a recording to go with it and everything. I find that extremely hard to believe. And so then the other thing would be AI. And obviously they would have the AI technology available to do this. But I just don't think that this would be the move that they would make if he was actually dead and they're trying to prolong this story. Just because it would involve way too many people knowing that. And all it takes is one person to leak to break the whole thing apart. I don't think that they would have the coordination and everything necessary. Now, if it gets leaked in the future, then that would verify it, and okay, it would prove I'm wrong, but it would prove I'm right at the same time. So, like, I don't. As things stand right now, I think that was actually him. Eric Winter says it would be impossible to keep that a secret. Right. I don't, and again, you're having to, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this call and we're going to have an AI voice and you're going to talk to Joe and pretend it's actually him and all of that. Like, this is, if I end up being proven wrong, I'll be glad because this would be a hell of a lot more fun if that was true. I don't think it's actually that. I think he's in really bad, shape, but I don't think that he's actually dead, or at least wasn't when this call was held. I'm doing my best to, I'm going out of my way to try to make predictions periodically, like make like actual predictions that I could easily be proven wrong on, for the sake of sincerity and authenticity. You guys know that I'm not just bullshitting you. Quick little point here from the shampoo warlord here. He says, no regime can survive without legitimacy. Power is not ultimately a substitute for legitimacy. It merely compensates partially for fragility or the inability to withstand a crisis. Our regime is both procedurally and substantively illegitimate. It will not survive any real crisis. Of course, and then he's quoting from something that he wrote, talking about Carl Schmitt. He said, of course, Schmitt's analysis is not the only reason our regime is illegitimate. For some time, I've been drawing a distinction between substantive and procedural legitimacy and pointing out that the regime is illegitimate on both counts. It is substantively illegitimate because it does not rule for the common good, but in pursuit of left ideology, combined with lining the pockets of a corrupt oligarchy. It is procedurally illegitimate because it has corrupted the electoral process, which is a claim closely related to the denial of equal chance. It is not that elections are required for legitimacy. Quite the contrary. A system with no public participation can be entirely legitimate and, in fact, excellent and preferable. But as a result of all overt voter fraud, quasi-fraud such as ballot harvesting, funded by billions from cretins such as Mark Zuckerberg, and information manipulation and propaganda, no election won by the NPCs of the regime can be considered legitimate in the least. This is why I highlighted this, because of his response here. So Jack Vian says there is right now no serious challenge to its legitimacy since there is no counter ideology that doesn't accept and defer to the premises of the dominant ideology. Hence the submissive posture of even self-styled dissidents, absolutely lacking in moral self-confidence. And Haywood says ideology is not necessary. That is a modern conceit. A counter elite always rises in a crisis, composed to a greater or lesser degree of both new men and traitors to the old. So-called elite theory word cells comment on X do not understand this. I think this is very true. A lot of the guys who talk about elite theory don't understand this, but this is also something that's implied by elite theory, that in a crisis, when a counter elite rises, that counter elite is going to be made up of new men who were not formally present among the governing elite, and it's also going to be comprised of traitors to the old regime. So opposing someone as a member of the new regime is on the grounds that they were formerly part of the old regime is silly. You're just at war with history. It doesn't. Of course, there are going to be people who are traitors to the old regime. Caesar was a traitor to the old regime. Got a super chat here. $5 US. Cold hard American cash from Jack. He says, I've been watching your vids here and there and helped me see things in a totally different way. Thank you and thank God. Well, glory to God, man. I'm glad. Doing my best out here. And I appreciate you guys keeping me honest. This is an interesting point. Cooper, you're full of shit. Why don't you come on here and tell me yourself? Let's see. What was the other? Yeah, Screwed Up Rebellion. He didn't sound any sicker than usual in that call. G.R. Jason says, isn't Kate Middleton still AFK? That's interesting. Yeah, she is indeed. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but it's interesting that preceded what's happening right now. And those things can't possibly be disconnected from one another. All right. Let's keep going here. So a recent powerful mutual, Andrew Torba, tweets out this article from the Daily Dot. Tech titans backing Trump adopt new dark MAGA aesthetic. So let's check out this article. We've got a regime rag, the Daily Dot. You've got Trump with the dark MAGA eyes. They are just manifesting it themselves. They're bringing this into reality. Are these tech titans' new dark MAGA aesthetic just hype for a meme coin? And it might be courtesy of a meme coin. What the? How does this subheading this doesn't go together at all? A swarm of Trump-backing reactionary big tech accounts on X are bathing their profile pictures in a deep-fried red hue and gleaming blue laser eye filters. The accounts sporting the new look include big names in tech like ex-CEO Elon Musk, Andreessen Horowitz co-founder Mark Andreessen, and Gab CEO Andrew Torba. And some accounts are linking the profile pictures to a new meme coin called Dark MAGA. Musk and Andreessen are recent Trump backers. While they once cultivated a more liberal business public image, in recent years they've come out full-throated in favor of the Republican Party. Musk claimed he would begin donating $45 million a month to a pro-Trump super PAC. I think he said yesterday, talking to Jordan Peterson, that he is not himself donating $45 million a month, but the $45 million a month is like the amount that is collectively being donated to that super PAC. Andreessen, who is on Facebook's board and endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016, announced last week that he'd be donating to Trump this election cycle. Torba, an anti-Semite who runs the right-wing social media platform Gab, is a long-time Trump backer who recently praised his vice presidential pick J.D. Vance as evidence that, quote, the board is starting to shift in our direction. Something cringe is afoot, posted at WashletJP, over a compilation of some of the accounts who shifted to the red hue blue eyes profile picture filter. I love watching these because the way that they talk about this, it's like they talk about it like they are Jane Goodall watching like the behavior of chimps or something. Like they just don't understand what's happening. Hey, there he is. I can hear my voice. He's a long-time Trump backer. I don't want to hear my voice, Cooper.
You're full of shit.
Matt Erickson is a charlatan. Hell yeah. What's going on, man?
Not much. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Is a meme coin the best way to circumvent election funding laws? There's another one of those chuckles, I'm in trouble moments. Continuing with this here. Included alongside Andreessen, Musk, and Torba were accounts like at Aristo's Revenge, who penned a tweet calling the new profile picture trend Red Dark MAGA. If you want a Red Dark MAGA PFP, visit it's dmaga.xyz, courtesy of the dmaga coin. It has a conversion tool. They wrote in a tweet linking to the site. So Aristos gets a mention here, and he gets called a they. They have no idea what they're just like encountering our little world on the internet for the first time. DMAGA, meme coin built on the Solana blockchain, is being pumped by various accounts across X and crypto pumping blogs. It has $1 million in liquidity and has jumped in value over 130,000% since July 21. The laser eye look is part of the crypto aesthetic. While posters online have photoshopped lasers over characters' eyes for a long time, Bitcoin boosters adopted the laser eyes during a 2021 trend to show their support for holding on to Bitcoin until its value reached 100,000 per coin. Bitcoin was valued at 50,000 in February 2021 when the trend started, and is valued at around 67,428 as of Monday. According to one account claiming to be behind the coin, Musk started using the profile picture after a member of the DMAGA team DM'd it to him. The Dark MAGA coin didn't immediately respond to questions asking for any proof that Musk had adopted the profile picture to support their coin or about the history of the token. What is Dark MAGA? The Dark MAGA movement is not new. It began in the aftermath of Trump's 2020 election loss, pushing for a more virulent, fascist Republican takeover. But it lost steam thanks to the Dark Brandon rebuttal, a pro-Biden riff on the right-wing Let's Go Brandon chant. Dark Brandon, coined ironically by some internet leftists, imagining an unapologetic take-no-prisoners Biden who implemented his own policies with as unrestrained glee as Trump did on the right. From there, Dark Brandon was picked up by pro-Biden liberal posters as a triumphant, innocuous way to celebrate Biden and turn back the Let's Go Brandon messaging on the right. This was part of why I wanted to read this whole thing, was this last paragraph. Isn't this amazing? So, Dark MAGA is a guy's pushing for a virulent fascist Republican takeover. But then Dark Brandon is a pro-Biden riff on the right-wing Let's Go Brandon chant. It was coined ironically, and it's a triumphant, innocuous way to celebrate Biden and turn back the Let's Go Brandon messaging to the right. Who wrote this here? Marlon Ettinger? Yeah, man, you're going to have to go back. Sorry. You got a Gmail? You can't even get it like at daily.com or something? You got a Gmail address? Pathetic. Yeah, now Brandon literally going dark. Shout out to Andrew Torba for being mentioned alongside Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen. All right. Now we've got the Heritage Foundation. Heritage is doing their own assassination info drop. They're doing their own investigation. We found the assassin's connections through our in-depth analysis of mobile ad data to track movements of Crooks and his associates. To do this, we tracked devices that regularly visited both Crooks' home and place of work and followed them. And they said here, why a special commission, not a task force, is needed. This cannot be business as usual. Business as usual almost got Donald Trump killed. And they've got a thread here. We're not going to go through that one. But I'm doing everything I can to get J13 commission memed into reality. Someone who regularly visited Crook's home and work also visited a building in Washington, D.C. located in Gallery Place. This is in the same vicinity of an FBI office on June 26, 2023. Whose device is this? So you have a device who regularly visited Crooks' home and work, And then it also was in the same vicinity of an FBI office. Interesting. Another device linked to crooks visited Plymouth, Massachusetts. And they've got the map of travel here. So March 1st, 2024, they went to Logan International Airport and stayed in Hotel 1620, March 1 to 3 of 2024. And then came back to Pittsburgh on March 3, 2024. We found a device linked to Crooks' work that traveled to Butler, Pennsylvania on July 4th and July 8th. This device stopped all activity on July 12th. On August 30, 2023, one device linked to Crooks visited Allegheny Arms at Allegheny Arms and Gunworks. Here's all the relevant locations within Bethel Park, Pennsylvania that are linked to both Crooks' home and place of work. So a bunch of different devices here. For those that are tracking this type of data, we identified devices that were located at Crooks' home and his work within the past year. There were at least 9 devices linked to these ADIDs. We're willing to cooperate with legitimate investigations and share further information. For the protection of whistleblowers in our investigation, we will not be sharing further information with the Congressional Task Force due to the connective tissues between that entity and FBI, U.S. Secret Service, and other entities. If you have any further information, leads, or tips, please email us directly at tips.oversightproject@heritage.org. I think this is very significant. They're not going to be sharing further information with the Congressional Task Force due to the relationship between that entity and FBI, Secret Service, and other entities. There's a very obvious implication here, and I think this is exactly the way to go about this. This shows to me that there's willpower here to ensure that this investigation doesn't get co-opted and Warren commissioned. Relatedly, this video dropped yesterday. So this is, I said a J13 commission would be a fantastic institutional bulldozer. We need a J13 commission. Give us our J13 commission. Live stream it on X. Video shows Secret Service perch at Trump's Butler rally had full view of the roof where the shooter carried out an assassination attempt. Look at this. Have you seen this video, Cooper?
Yeah.
This is insane. This is where he was shooting from, right here. This was the view that they had. I think this is how he climbed up right here. This HVAC. There's all the talk about the ladder, but I can't remember if I've just heard this publicly, or I can't remember if I have heard this publicly, but I have heard it privately from a source that I trust, that he did not climb up a ladder. He climbed up this HVAC unit here. So in clear view of them.
We're not close. Yeah.
So, okay, I got that story here that I wanted to share, and then I've got a few videos here now from the testimony yesterday. So Kimberly Cheatle resigned shortly before I went live today. I would resign too after a day like this.
I think she would have resigned the very next day.
Right.
If we lived in like a sane world.
Uh-huh. And I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me that she's kind of just a patsy. She's like a willing patsy, but she's ultimately taking the fall here. She got completely hung out to dry. She didn't go in here, like, she went in here because she had to. She didn't go in here because, she wanted to, or because she was like, she got sent to the wolves. And wolves indeed.
Yeah, look how sloped that roof is.
yeah.
Our
dangerous.
Secret Service agents are a bunch of bitches, basically.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. And again, you guys should go listen to, as soon as this is over, you should go listen to Tucker talking to Jack Posobiec. They've got a lot of really good information, both like information that Jack Posobiec is bringing from Ron Johnson's investigation, and then their own personal takes on what's going on. Eric Winter says, slopes are my kryptonite. Many such cases. there's a long history of dissident right-wing Twitter, YouTube guys having slopes be their kryptonite, if you get what I mean. So this is the first video. I've got 3 here. This is Representative McClain. I believe she's from, is it Lisa McClain? I think she's from Michigan. Is she? Yep, Michigan's 9th Congressional District. So here's one of your people, Cooper.
Is this good or bad?
But you take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosive in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question...
It's so weird hearing somebody speak with like a Michigan accent.
Common.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by it. I don't even hear it, but right now it's coming through strong.
Yeah, she's not quite your wife, but she's pretty close.
Yeah.
Is who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain. All right, here we go. I'm not certain. I don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
Every woman in Michigan sounds like that. That's how they say that. I've heard that so many times in my life.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's like it has have their upper lips higher or something.
Yeah.
I almost can't make that sound. That like I.
Egg.
Yeah.
Egg. It's really annoying.
These are your people, Cooper. You have to accept them.
Yeah, I don't like listening to women talk just in general. Hearing Michigan women talk especially.
It's rough.
Well,
you're going to have to listen to some more women talk because I've got 2 more clips after this one.
Okay, I think I'll go get some coffee. I'll be right back. Go ahead.
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how
their investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. Let's for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related
I'm
to the
asking
events
you
on
an
that
answer to the question.
Ugh.
If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up?
This is like,
what are you hiding?
This takes me
friend?
back to getting like,
I'm not.
I don't know, getting berated by my mom as like a 15-year-old. I don't like this.
Hold on, I was another one here that I forgot. I don't want the whole video.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this Cheatle lady's a little uncomfortable.
Oh yes, yes. Taylor said the regime did a complete spit roast of this woman, and they hope that the story will die off now that they're waving her scalp as a trophy. I think that is the case, which means that her resigning, getting that scalp, isn't enough. We press forward. Give me my institutional bulldozer. Here is, I lied. We're not going to have 2 more clips of women berating Kimberly Cheatle. We're going to have 3 more.
Oh, joy.
This is Nancy Mace.
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee.
Oh my God!
Have you provided any?
Who's the guy? Who's the guy who's talking?
I'm not sure.
He needs to be pushed into a locker. Do you hear his voice?
I thought you were going to say pushed into a lake.
That too. That's fine.
John says this kind of talk is a mom's superpower. You can't make a coherent response without going nuclear.
And all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th. Have you provided all
Who is this
memorandums
chick?
within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That-
She's a congresswoman. I don't remember where she's from.
Okay.
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. Like you're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions.
I would have to get back to you.
She's from South Carolina.
Okay.
So she said the no-no word.
She's got a weird face.
What's her name? Nancy Mace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
she's
that
like
the one in
a
the pink.
Yeah. She's Jason says I'd put babies in her though.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, but
she's
kind of like a bat.
She's been generally very pro-Trump. Republican, why not? Yeah. That's her.
Yeah.
That's nails her perfectly.
Yeah, why not? That's actually really. That's it. Except in Michigan, we don't say aunt, we say aunt.
Aunt.
My aunt, my wine aunt.
So
it seems pretentious when people say aunt.
Aunt. You don't like it?
Not really. It just doesn't. It just feels wrong.
So this is Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who's just elected. I think. I don't think she's been there very long. We now have our Republican AOC.
Director Cheatle, can you please give me the names of the individuals who are in charge of your conduct for the rally?
I'm not going to release names.
Can you give me the
today.
titles? And how many individuals?
No.
Nothing?
We had a full advance team that was responsible for advancing
How many
the
people are
site.
the final approval authority?
There are a number of people
Give
that
me a
are
number.
engaged in approving
Can you
the
give me
plan.
a number?
No, I do not have
Okay.
a firm number.
Can you just confirm whether or not, I understand this is an open investigation, but in order to dispel conspiracy theories, have you guys been able to subpoena the shooter's Discord records, or has the FBI, to your knowledge?
I believe that the FBI is working on those.
Okay. Is it factual to say that you have not ruled out that the shooter was working with other people or persons?
Again, the FBI is conducting the criminal investigation into
Can
the
you,
shooter.
at least in an effort to dispel conspiracy theories, can you confirm or deny that?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he's acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooter on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second shooter.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because according to testimony from multiple witnesses, they did report that. And again, to my understanding, there were over 40 sniper teams that were briefed by the Butler ESU. And I want to make sure that people are aware, if you're saying that there's not another shooter, that we are able to clear that information, because from this whole entire briefing, it doesn't seem like much information has been able to get out to the American people. So I'm trying to dispel rumors, as I'm sure you understand. Was it true that Secret Service was present at the Butler ESU briefing?
There was a briefing between the counter sniper teams that were working on the
Service
ground.
present?
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay, I want to read you a report from people that seem to be throwing you under the bus and stated that they were
Hey,
in
Matt.
attendance and that.
Is she single?
I don't know.
Go get her, Deaf Ed.
Yeah. Where's she? I think she's from Florida. I think she was the one that had all the like super cringe campaign stuff of her out running and shooting and everything. Yeah, Florida's 13th. She's 35.
It seemed to work.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think she's I think the comparison to AOC, if you understand AOC's background, like where she came from, why she wound up where she is, what she's been used for, I think that Miss APL here is the exact same person from the Republican side.
Secret Service was not in attendance at the security briefing, according to individuals with knowledge, to also include that the AGR building where the shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was located was actually not a part of their security perimeter for that. So there was not Secret Service present. It seems as though that when you were asked earlier from Rep. Krishnamurthy about whether or not Secret Service was aware of a threat, you had said no, they were unaware of a threat. And yet, according to communications, again, from law enforcement that were in some of these group chats, they actually had reported that Secret Service was made aware of a threat at around 5:59 p.m. as a part of the command, including Secret Service, aware of messages and requests about information about the suspect's location. Can you please tell me if you have knowledge of that at all?
Again, I think we're conflating the difference between the term threat and suspicious.
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
Of a suspicious individual.
Okay. Chairman, in my opinion, according to some of the testimony today, I feel that you have perjured yourself in some instances. And so I'm going to ask for a full review of the transcripts by staff. And if you find that to be the case, I do ask that you bring perjury charges against the director. I will say this, it is very frustrating, and I've talked to my colleagues and we've said it to your face, that you have been up here basically stonewalling our ability to get the answers to the American people. And what I will also say is that every single member of Congress does not feel safe with you in charge. You have heard that, and I think that we are all sitting ducks with you in directing the Secret Service currently. But more importantly, it sends a message to our adversaries that we are not protected, and we are one of the strongest countries in the world, so you have essentially made us a less safe country because of it. As a result of that, I'm asking you to formally step down. I share my same opinions as my Democrat colleagues, and I also think that your efforts to bring forward a full investigation and report in 60 days is unacceptable, and as a result of that, I'm going to do everything in my legislative toolkit to ensure that that happens sooner rather than later, and I'm sure that you know that we brought a vote on inherent contempt against Garland for essentially blocking a congressional investigation, and I don't think that you should be any different. So I will say that I am just completely disgusted by your performance today, and I understand that you're probably in a position where you're being told not to testify, which is why we had to subpoena you. I think that goes back to Garland. But again, that is part of the flushing that we need to get out of Washington, and I would be happy to assist in that process. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
Whew. That was, she carpet bombed her. Taylor Brown says these events are nothing more than sounding boards for congressional members to puff their chests and engage in bravado to get sound bites for election ads. Yeah, for sure. They're also like these congressmen, congresswomen are vessels. They're vessels for different interests to set narratives and like lay out the agenda. And in this case, so like now she says, I think you need to resign. I agree with my other Democrat colleagues. You need to resign. And we don't like, you're in charge of our security. I don't trust you whatsoever. You need to step down. And then she steps down today. Now she could turn around and she could say, I'm the one who made her step down. And I am completely okay with that narrative existing. John says, I don't think men can match the levels of condescension women can achieve. Impressive. Yeah. All right. So one more. This is AOC herself. Now, I'm going to play this because I have some thoughts. Whoops. I have some thoughts about Miss AOC's trajectory. This is another one where watch her body language, listen to her tone of voice, that sort of thing.
You established earlier that the building upon which the shooter operated from was outside of that established perimeter, correct, for the Butler, Pennsylvania event?
It was outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now, the individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
And so What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
A perimeter was established, and even though there were buildings that were outside of that perimeter, it wasn't just that building, there were a number of buildings in the area, and there was overwatch that was created to help mitigate some.
So one thing that I'd point out is that she said one of the most popular weapons used in mass shootings. And I think that's interesting that she said that, because one of the reports that I've seen multiple times that I also got some confirmation from privately is that the way that they're seeing it right now, he didn't show up there explicitly for the purpose of going after Trump. That was more of a last second decision, that he was there for the sake of a mass shooting. So it's interesting she said that. I don't think that's necessarily been public in like in the part of the official formal narrative. Maybe that was a slip of the tongue. Maybe that was her, kind of revealing something that she knows from private, kind of accidentally revealing it in public. But her whole demeanor there is it stands out to me. A lot of the videos that she's been posting recently talking about her support for Joe and like trying to stay behind Joe and everything, she is taking a kind of a dark turn in her whole demeanor and everything. She's not the same AOC she was before. Let me see if I can find. You can see in her face that her facial expressions are very strained and very tight. She's as she's asking these questions, she's kind of halting and she doesn't have a narrative. She's trying to pull one out, but compared to the other ladies are fucking burning this chick alive. And she's here and she's trying to play her role, but she looks genuinely uncomfortable and unhappy. And she's looked this way for a while now. I've noticed when people tweet her videos, they come across my timeline of her doing her live streams on Instagram or whatever. She's got a very different vibe than she used to. She came in as the radical and all full of vim and vigor, but she's gotten very serious lately. And this was my prediction. I said, thought that's been percolating in the old noggin for the last couple of weeks. AOC's gone through a character development arc from astroturfed as a radical vanguardist to neutered as a Pelosi patsy. You saw that she came in, she was like super radical and she's the squad and everything. And then she was very, very quickly brought to heel. And it happened right after her campaign manager, who was obviously her intelligence handler, he all of a sudden just bailed on her. And immediately after that, she was brought to heel by Pelosi. I said, I think we're seeing the inklings of the next chapter. She's darker and more serious. She seems sincerely disturbed by what's happening within her party. Going to make a prediction for the next 4 years. She moderates toward Tulsi politically while positioning herself to take up Pelosi's mantle when the old bat kicks off. I think we're starting to see like more moderate, serious, sober power broker from AOC. She's not just a meme anymore. She's moving in a much more serious direction. And someone said her support of Biden the last couple weeks seemed oddly sincere to me. Don't know why, since he was so clearly an electoral loser. And I said, I'm pretty sure she understands the stakes of disappearing him like they have. She showed up in D.C. all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Now she's been in the back rooms, and it's got her like Ben Affleck with a cigarette. Duffhead, shout out Duffhead, he said, even more shocking, she called Trump the president, not former, and she didn't correct herself. And I've seen this happening a lot with a lot of people that have said they're referring to this like as an assassination of the president. They'll say, well, someone took a shot at the president. They keep referring to him as the president. And they're like, once a guy's been president, like people will still refer to him as Mr. President as a form of respect. But there's kind of a subtle thing going on here where people recognize that he is the president effectively. He is the most presidential character out there. And I think one of the things you're going to see happening more and more, it's already started a little bit. One of the things you're going to see happening more and more is that foreign leaders are going to start treating Trump as the president. They're going to start having conversations with him as if he's the president and doing their damnedest to kind of push things in that direction, because right now there's like a power struggle and foreign leaders are like, okay, so who's the president that I'm going to be relating to here? Like, is it going to be the incompetent cackling bimbo? Is it going to be the insincere gay guy, one of several? Is it like, this is real life. If you're the head of state and the United States is in the middle of a power struggle and you don't know who the president is going to be, you would much prefer it to be Trump. You would overwhelmingly want it to be Trump because you know exactly what you're going to get from him. Doesn't matter if you're someone who's maybe potentially in a hostile relationship with the United States. You're going to prefer Trump just for stability, because the alternatives are getting more and more worrisome. So I think we're going to start seeing, like her calling Trump the president, like subconsciously she already recognizes him as the president. Ambient Olympic said maybe, but if she does, I'm taking the cynical motive of moving toward a more nationally viable candidacy at some point. The fire-breathing femtard act is fine for her current role, not a national one. She knows the Democrat bench is paper thin. Yeah, and right. And I think she's going to be pulled by both sincere and insincere motivations. I think it's probably easy to understate just how disturbing it would be to come in as this like waitress chick or whatever, and you're just kind of this ditzy airhead. But then you start actually experiencing the dark room conversations, and you start seeing how ugly and nasty this whole thing is. That would have an effect on a person. If there's any humanity in there, that's going to have an effect on them. So I think some of this is insincere and some like political posturing, essentially angling for the Democratic ticket in 2028. But I think there's also some sincere motivations in there. Okay. So that's all I had for that stuff. We're going to wrap up here with a couple of Yarvin stories. And then the very last thing is completely unrelated. It'll be a nice little schizo thing that we'll end on. Do me a favor and hit the like button. We got 106 watching right now and 63 likes. Do me a favor, hit that like button. We need it. I don't know what happened to Cooper. They got him. Praying for Trump to tell Bibi to F off. When Bibi endorsed Biden in 2021, Trump was pissed. He was quoted as saying, "Fuck him." So, yeah. The relationship of the United States to Israel is in the balance right now. It's definitely up for grabs. All the black pillars can't accept that because they can't imagine living in a world where they aren't required to revolve their entire conscious mind around the Jews, or the state of Israel. But yeah, the relationship, Israel clearly has strong interests in how this election turns out, and that alone should be significant. Biden cited in public. Interesting. If he's actually been cited, I'd be very interested to see what that's about. Taylor Brown says Harris spurning Netanyahu like she has is an acknowledgement on her part that she's not going to win the election. That's an interesting thought. My wife says, I thought that said Blippy and not Bibi. If Trump told Blippy to F off, I would die. Okay. You AI video guys out there, we need a video of Trump giving Blippy a phone call and telling him to go fuck himself. I really need that in my life. Do me a favor out there, guys. Let's see. So Gil Duran says J.D. Vance is deeply influenced by a San Francisco man who once suggested turning unproductive people into biodiesel. Meet Curtis Yarvin, the Peter Thiel political guru who hearts dictatorship and whose ideas may reach the White House via New Republic. New Republic is freaking out about Curtis Yarvin, and you are blackpilling? So he just is... We'll go through that here in a little bit after we go through the article first. Where J.D. Vance gets his weird, terrifying, techno-authoritarian ideas. Yes, Peter Thiel was the senator's benefactor, but they're both inspired by an obscure software developer who has some truly frightening thoughts about reordering society. In 2008, a software developer in San Francisco named Curtis Yarvin, writing under a pseudonym, proposed a horrific solution for people he deemed not productive. Convert them into biodiesel, which can help power the Mooney buses. This is from Patchwork. He's talking about Patchwork. Yarvin, a self-described reactionary and extremist who was 35 years old at the time, clarified that he was just kidding. But then he continued. The trouble with the biodiesel solution is that no one would want to live in a city whose public transportation was fueled, even just partly, by the distilled remains of its late underclass. However, it helps us describe the problem we are trying to solve. Our goal, in short, is a humane alternative to genocide. He then concluded that the, quote, best humane alternative to genocide is to, quote, virtualize these people. Imprison them in, quote, permanent solitary confinement, where, to avoid making them insane, they would be connected to an immersive virtual reality interface so they could, quote, experience a rich, fulfilling life in a completely imaginary world. Yarvin's disturbing manifestos have earned him influential followers, chief among them tech billionaire Peter Thiel and his one-time Silicon Valley protege, Senior Senator J.D. Vance, whom the Republican Party just nominated to be Donald Trump's vice president. If Trump wins the election, there is little doubt that Vance will bring Yarvin's twisted techno-authoritarianism to the White House. And one can imagine with horror what a receptive would-be autocrat like Trump might do with those ideas. Trump's first campaign was undoubtedly a watershed moment for authoritarianism in American politics, but some thinkers on the right had been laying the groundwork for years, hoping for someone to mainstream their ideas. Yarvin was one of them. Way back in 2012, in a speech on how to reboot the U.S. government, he said, "If Americans want to change their government, they're going to have to get over their dictator phobia." He had also written favorably of slavery and white nationalists in the late 2000s, though he has stated he is not a white nationalist himself. Both Thiel and Vance are friends of Yarvin. In The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power, reporter Max Chafkin describes Yarvin as the, quote, house political philosopher of the Thielverse, a term for the people in Thiel's orbit. In 2013, Thiel invested in Tlon. What would that would actually be? Tlon? A software startup co-founded by Yarvin. In 2016, Yarvin attended Thiel's election night party in San Francisco, where, according to Chafkin, champagne flowed once it became clear that Thiel's investment in Donald Trump would pay off. Since entering politics, Vance has publicly praised and parroted Yarvin's ideas. That was worrying enough when Vance was only a senator. Now that he could soon be a heartbeat away from the presidency, his close ties to Yarvin are more alarming than ever. Superficial analyses of why certain tech billionaires are aligning with Trump tend to fixate on issues like taxes and regulations. But that's only part of the story. Tech plutocrats like Thiel and Elon Musk already have money. Now they want power, as much as money can buy. Stories about Vance tend to focus on his hardscrabble Ohio roots, but his relationship with Thiel and his stint in San Francisco are key to understanding his politics. Vance owes his meteoric rise to Thiel, who largely bankrolled it. As a Yale student in 2011, he heard Thiel give a speech in which he suggested that smart people should be working in tech instead of wasting their time at elite schools. Afterward, Vance emailed Thiel, who invited him to California. Following a brief stint as a lawyer, Vance moved to San Francisco. Eventually, he landed at Mithro Capital, a company co-founded by Thiel. He finished writing Hillbilly Elegy while there, and Thiel wrote a blurb praising it. When Vance moved back to Ohio and eventually started his own fund, Narya Capital, both Thiel and Mark Andreessen invested. When Vance ran for U.S. Senate in 2022, Thiel spent an unprecedented $15 million on the campaign and persuaded Trump to endorse him. Vance had previously compared Trump to Hitler. In 2024, Thiel led the charge to convince Trump to pick Vance as VP. Vance is a Thiel creation. And like his billionaire benefactor who once wrote, I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible. Vance embraces a radical ideology hell-bent on destroying government as we know it. And they got those ideas, at least in part, from Yarvin. Yarvin is the chief thinker behind an obscure but increasingly influential far-right neo-reaction, or NRX movement, that some call the Dark Enlightenment. Among other things, it openly promotes dictatorships as superior to democracies and views nations like the United States as outdated software systems. Based. Yarvin seeks to re-engineer governments by breaking them up into smaller entities called patchworks, which would be controlled by tech corporations. Quoting, "The basic idea of patchwork is that, as the crappy governments we inherited from history are smashed, they should be replaced by a global spiderweb of tens, even hundreds of thousands of sovereign and independent mini-countries, each governed by its own joint stock corporation without regard to the residents' opinions," he wrote in Patchwork, a political system for the 21st century. It's so delightful imagining these guys reading things like, what What did he say? Each governed by its own joint stock corporation without regard to the residents' opinions. Each patchwork would be ruled by a realm, a corporation with absolute power. Citizens would be free to move, but every other realm would also be ruled by corporate governments with chilling impunity. For example, Yarvin says of the tech overlords of the San Francisco realm could arbitrarily decide to cut off its citizens' hands with no fear of legal consequences, because they're a sovereign power beholden to no federal government or laws. The lack of self-awareness is just staggering. The federal government is like some magical entity to these people. Quoting from Yarvin, the realm, having sovereign power, can compel the resident to comply with all promises. Since San Francisco is not an Islamic state, it does not ask its residents to agree that their hand will be cut off if they steal. But it could. And San Francisco likewise can promise not to cut off its residents' hands until it's blue in the face. But since it is a sovereign state, no one can enforce this promise against it. In Friscorp, as Yarvin calls the San Francisco realm, an all-seeing Orwellian surveillance system would enforce public safety. All residents, even temporary visitors, carry an ID card with RFID response. All are genotyped and iris scanned. Public places and transportation systems track everyone. Security cameras are ubiquitous. Every car knows where it is and who is sitting in it and tells the authorities both. So now we have the libs coming out against the idea of having an all-seeing Orwellian surveillance system. Vance has not advocated for realms yet, but some of his most extreme ideas echo Yarvin. They're both fond of political purges, for instance. In a 2021 podcast interview, Vance was asked how to get liberals out of government institutions. Denazification, debothification, he replied. I tend to think that we should seize the institutions of the left and turn them against the left. We need like a debothification program, a de-wokeification program. He predicted Trump would run again and win, and then offered some advice. I think that what Trump should do, if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. He added that Trump should defy any court orders that tried to halt this partisan purge of the civil service. So you know how we've talked about the way that the black pillars are manifesting the very thing that they ostensibly are against? That's what these guys are doing. Every single time someone writes a story about quoting Vance, talking about a de-wokeification program in the government, they are bringing it into reality. We must let them. Allow them to manifest the thing that is their greatest fear. If you haven't clued into this by this point, all the shrieking about Trump has continued to make him stronger and stronger and stronger. The more these people about this stuff, the more they manifest it. Yarvin calls this plan rage, retire all government employees. It's captured perfectly in Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's blueprint for a second Trump administration, which calls for firing an estimated 500,000 federal employees and dismantling entire agencies. If Trump wins, Vance may well be in charge of executing the plan. It's kind of surreal to, like, 6 months ago, I think we were the only people on the internet, basically, who were talking about, we were mashing up Yarvin with Project 2025. And now we've got the libs at the New Republic freaking out about it. Vance did not get this extremist ideology from his Appalachian upbringing or, needless to say, Yale law. It was incubated in America's tech capital, San Francisco, where he forged crucial ties with Thiel, Yarvin, and David Sachs, the longtime Thiel associate, and pro-Putin crusader who recently hosted a Trump fundraiser at his mansion in Pacific Heights. And if Vance ends up in the White House, it will be with $45 million in monthly campaign contributions from Musk, who already made a $44 billion in-kind contribution by gutting San Francisco-based Twitter and transforming it into a right-wing misinformation weapon. In a fateful twist, San Francisco also launched the political career of Kamala Harris, who is set to inherit the task of saving American democracy from tech authoritarianism.
Yeah, right.
And this guy is a San Francisco journalist. Imagine if the consequence of all of this is that all of the libs turn against San Francisco. They are like all of a sudden San Francisco no longer becomes their territory.
Remember, it wasn't that long ago. We were looking at, I don't know, someone was sharing excerpts from the paper writing about Napoleon coming to Paris or wherever he was coming.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's over the span of what, like 20 days or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, they're like, oh, this is the worst guy ever. Oh, he's not going to make it. It's just nothing. this is a nobody. And then with each day, it gets more and more extreme. And by the time they actually get to Paris or wherever he was going, it's like, oh yeah, we welcome in our new overlord, basically. And they're all very cordial and nice. So I read things like this, and I'm just like, 20 days, just wait.
Yep. Bryce says Yarvin gives off vibes of playing too much Skyrim or Oblivion and reading too many books about kings and is it supposed to be kingdoms? Just typoed. Yeah, what's funny is that if you read Patchwork, he wrote this in like 2008, 2009. Think about the world that we were living in when Yarvin wrote Patchwork. He's some obscure internet blogger writing to some little audience in a before the internet was fully connected, and he's basically making a work of science fiction. He's writing it as a work of science fiction self-consciously. He's just kind of like, well, here's what the ideal thing would look like. If we could make the exact thing that I want from the existing system, this is what it would look like. I would imagine that even Yarvin never expected that something like this would be published in the context that it is. The next VP has Curtis Yarvin in his ear, and you, little gay boy, are black-pilled? That's right. Shout out to Straight Buster. Oh, wait, actually, let's go back and see if he added anything in the follow-up to this tweet that's worth looking at. Okay, here. This is interesting. So he screenshots part of his article here, and then he says, sound familiar? In April, I wrote about Balaji Srinivasan, whose idea for a network state authoritarian government in San Francisco clearly derives from Yarvin's ideas. Both men emphasize the purging of one's opponents, an idea Vance embraces. I really like someone tying himself into such knots that he thinks that Balaji Srinivasan is a would-be authoritarian. When I started researching this stuff last year, I figured these tech authoritarian fascist types would use Northern California as a proving ground and then try to go state national eventually. But no, they're accelerating, trying to infiltrate the White House in 2025. And so there's another article from Vanity Fair here. Anything else? Okay. Let us now read a work from Mr. Yarvin himself. More reflections on the Kamala coup. Can I zoom this in? Yeah. All right. Now this is interesting. I quote tweeted this yesterday, and someone replied and said that this was the most mold buggian that Yarvin has sounded since he came out as Yarvin. And I had the same thought. Like, as I read through this, I was like, this is a like a throwback. It feels like I'm being tossed back. For me, it was like 5 years ago when I was first starting to read Yarvin. He says, Americans are still reeling a little bit from the reality that their democracy is a place where an aged leader is hustled out the door like this. Quoting, Nancy made clear that they could do this the easy way or the hard way, said one Democrat familiar with private conversations who was granted anonymity to speak candidly. She gave them 3 weeks of the easy way. It was about to go the hard way. The easy way or the hard way? Don't you keep getting this am I in a movie vibe? You are not in a movie. It's the opposite. You thought you were in a movie, but now it turns out you're not. You're just in history. What you're seeing is history breaking through the movie. Does all this make you feel like you were on drugs? You are not on drugs. You were on drugs. You are coming down. This is reality breaking through the trip. It's painful a little, but it's a good feeling. Unfortunately, you may not have much choice but to learn to enjoy it. You thought you weren't in history for reasons. You had reasons. They were good reasons. White was black, 2 + 2 was 5, and all men were created equal. History had ended. All power belonged to the workers and peasants. Democracy was the worst system of government except all the others. Movie logic. Poetic logic. Imsonian ambiguity of the 7th type. And real quick, Imsonian ambiguity of the 7th type is 2 words that within context are opposites that expose a fundamental division in the author's mind. This is his democracy and politics thing that he talks about all the time. Wonderful stuff. But guys, I got to tell you, history is full of this stuff. And you're definitely in history. Just roll with it a little. If it feels like you took a little too much acid, cut back on the Twitter a little. But first and foremost, you have to learn to relax and enjoy it. Later in our conversation, you'll meet Jesus. I mean, not Jesus, Lewis, but you'll see. Because my feeling is it's only starting to get weird. See, we still haven't seen the president. That's the one power a hustled out frontman still controls. Now the tables are turned. Biden is a stubborn Irish bastard. He could be mean. Now he is in a position to be mean. Before that terrible debate, he had no reason to hurt them, and they had no reason to hurt him. Then someone spiked his Aricept dexedrine drip with saline, lost him the debate, and changed the world. Because the incentives diverged between the Biden entourage and the rest of the Democratic Party. After the debate, he could do nothing to hurt them, except do nothing. They could do everything to hurt him. Having started with the easy way, they were about to try it the hard way. Evidently, the hard way was too much. The president earlier had observed that God could get him to step down, but no one else could. Maybe it turned out that Nancy Pelosi could make that happen. That little chat with God, that conversation. But now they can do nothing to hurt him except, well, we'll get to that. But by doing nothing, he can still hurt them. President Biden has to not only surrender to the coup, but cooperate enthusiastically with it. Otherwise, things get weird. Things are already weird. But excuses time out. While I refuse to be drawn into the graphology debate on Biden's supposed signature, a priori, I would not expect the Joe Biden I see on TV to be able to sign his name at all. Sure, he has COVID. Okay, people get COVID. People get Parkinson's. There is simply no good reason for the president not to be able to talk to the press, especially if he is staying president. But there are plenty of weird reasons. If they're ready to... Good.
Well, I was just going to throw this out there that I was... Back when I used to be cool and I played in a punk band, I was going to start an emo side project called Kid Parkinson's. So that name's taken, by the way. No one else can take that. I still have dibs on that one.
You called it, right?
Yeah, I thought that would be a really good name for an emo band.
Kid Parkinson's. Girl retard.
Mm-hmm.
If they're ready to lie about his Parkinson's or whatever, could it become long COVID? Could the president die of COVID? People die of COVID. Could the president die? Take a sudden turn for the worse? A tragedy. The thing is, people already feel a little misinformed about his health. Why not be hanged for an ox? Weirder and weirder. Scalia's pillow is already hanging on Chekhov's wall. The longer President Biden fails to appear in person, not AI, in public, and explain, the weirder everything gets. The more real history, which is reality, starts breaking through your little movie. Who are these people, actually? They're human beings. They have parents. They come from somewhere. Well, the easy way or the hard way. No one ever talks about the fact that Nancy Pelosi is literally the mezzo-soprano of Baltimore. To be exact, the daughter of Thomas D'Alessandro, the old mafia mayor of Baltimore. See, before Baltimore, the, checks notes, Charm City, was controlled by black criminals, it was controlled by Italian criminals. Thomas Aquinas used to call this the Great Chain of Being. As Wikipedia explains, FBI records released on January 6, 2021. What an interesting date. FBI records released on January 6, 2021 showed D'Alessandro had been the subject of a special inquiry investigation in March and April 1961, revealing numerous unsubstantiated allegations of association with criminals in Baltimore. Unsubstantiated. Here, John F. Kennedy gives Ms. Soprano a quick mammogram. Remember what I said about AOC and her going from, you know, kind of pretty ditzy airhead to actual serious power broker? This was Nancy Pelosi early on in her political career.
I'm surprised that's Nancy Pelosi. She was pretty.
Uh-huh. Right.
She's really turned into a hag.
Uh-huh. That's what happens when you try to stay alive for too long.
Yeah, the adrenochrome.
Uh-huh. She seems unfazed. One suspects that growing up in the D'Alessandro household taught Nancy one or two things about doing things the easy way or the hard way. And when you get these late Soviet vibes, Americans, friends keep recommending Iannucci's Death of Stalin, but I will have to wait for AI to dub it into Russian with English subtitles. Don't be like, OMG, how bad is it? When did it start happening? Guys, it never started happening. It was always happening. Your wife was cheating before she met you. You were her second date that night. That magical night. Not out of 3, out of 4. When you write the new history of your marriage, it has to be a history in which this woman, this female person who you thought you really knew, who you really deeply, truly loved for many, many years, was always a whore. Sorry, you don't have to do it. You could choose to keep living in the black and white movie. In good Alex Jones terms, what is happening is not that the system just started lying to you. What is happening is that the system for lying to you is suffering a system error. The longer the current weirdness continues, the more damage is done to the system's credibility. That was the thing about the late Soviet Union. The post-Soviet period was not just the result of imposing the Western legal system on the East. It was, but it was also the result of the late Soviet period in which security services and organized criminals were already becoming increasingly indistinguishable, portending the 21st century Russian Siloviki state. And yet that late Soviet state still had to flap its lips about the workers and the peasants. The Biden entourage makes the Clinton entourage look clean. Just wait for the Harris entourage. It too will flap its lips. Here are the ugly stakes in the current Biden standoff. He has to cooperate, or things get weird. Since he stepped down, they have no way to escalate except punishing him. How can they punish him? Well, they can prosecute his family. They can prosecute him. If the story isn't that he stepped down like a wise old statesman, a statesman who is certainly not too busy for one or two last fatherly chats with the American people, if not the straight-out campaigning for Kamala Marathon the party would hope for, the story could be that he is bad. That would be seriously weird. At a certain point, it might be the least weird thing. I don't know. As Hunter's namesake put it, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Or is it getting weird? Again, maybe, in a way, it's getting less weird, historically. So much for geotemporal exceptionalism. Our time and place, it turns out, is just another time and place. As Carlyle predicted, eventually Americans would find out that their country is just another country. Their government is just another government. Their regime is just another regime. Look, when you have to hate the only system of government that actually works, this is what you get. Yes, democracy is pretty. When you want a pretty ideal whose reality can never be real, what you get is an ugly reality you were never supposed to see. But now you have to see it. Bummer, dude. Sorry about the whole Truman Show vibe. Americans, do you want to understand how government is supposed to work? After this latest charade, are you finally ready to admit that there are no secret magic beans in your beautiful old pieces of paper? That your history is just history? That your country is just another country? Can you hear this with your jimmies yet unrustled? Can you take a step up the catwalk and, like Truman, look back on the movie set of your old public reality when you still thought it wasn't? When you still thought your time, your place, was somehow an exception to history, was better than history, just naturally an improvement on all other times and places, at least in its governance? In retrospect, in hindsight, wasn't thinking in this way narrow, parochial, even bigoted in the old dictionary sense of this word? Don't you want to discard all this smallness? Don't you want to grow? Don't you want to change? Don't you want beautiful women who just got out of a relationship to be shocked, then amused, then enthralled? Then try being a monarchist. As Anais Nin put it, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. The thing is, monarchism is not a belief. Monarchism is an absence of belief. Are you ready to throw away all the stupid sacred principles you believe in? Accept that they are all just Western variants of the workers and the peasants? Take a deep breath and admit that by historical standards, your government, your system of government, even your idea of government, is not just not necessarily excellent, let alone superlative or even exceptional, but perhaps not even good? Are you ready to admit that your country is just another country and your regime is just another regime? Ready to learn the true principles of government from scratch? Why mess with the rest? Go straight to the best. Learn from the Sun King. What's great about Louis XIV's instructions for his son is that they were never meant to be published. They may or may not be fully authentic, but they are certainly plausible. They are also surprisingly hard to find. They haven't been translated since 1806, and Claude decided to hallucinate the name of the anonymous translator, who decided to call his subject Lewis. Library science is hard. As the Sun King explains, quoting, "Nothing can so securely establish the happiness and tranquility of a country as the perfect combination of authority in the single person of the sovereign. The greatest subdivision in this respect often produces the greatest calamities, and whether it be detached into the hands of individuals or those of corporate bodies, it always is there in a state of fermentation." Close quote. Forget everything you know about history, government, and political science. Learn that. Read the rest of the book, maybe. You'll understand the state of fermentation and maybe even learn to enjoy it. Text the link to all the new art hoes you're meeting. Make bets with your new bros on whether they read it. Living in reality can be good. The risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Imagine if Democrats learned to love monarchy, just from all this Game of Thrones stuff. I think the president, even detained as he seems to be in his Delaware DACA, could still strike back if he had a plan. If only he had a plan. Let me give him a plan. The name of that plan is Hunter. I think it's too much to ask to put Hunter at the top of the ticket. But what if the president's price for cooperating was not Biden-Harris, but Harris-Biden? We have a young Biden, tried and tested by the hardest of experiences, emerging like George W. Bush from addiction. Put this crown prince up against J.D. Vance. Now there's a debate America really needs to see. And it would clear up a lot of this legal BS too. Come on, Nancy, let's be reasonable. I just fucking love his writing.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't like the content itself is almost beside the point to me. Just the meter to it. If you notice, like at the beginning for the first few paragraphs, it was all really short, punchy sentences. And then as he began to really get into it, all of a sudden he got these really, really long sentences. He just has the people who don't get his writing, who think that he's like too weird or whatever, like you're just plebs. I can't understand people who don't like his writing style. Right.
Yeah.
Here's the article. I'll drop the link in here. I know. So I know, Cooper, you liked the sound of a Vice President Hunter. Why do you like that?
That just sounds like so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Lean into the movie.
Well, and there's something about Hunter Biden where it's like, this is clearly like the most degenerate person who's ever lived, ever. Yeah. And he's just completely unapologetic about it. And you're like, you got to kind of admire the balls.
Uh-huh.
Like, yeah, so what of it?
Uh-huh. From Yarvin's perspective, so like Yarvin is he's very Straussian in his writing, and I think that's one of the reasons people don't like it. To me, I think like Straussianism is an art form in itself. What he's getting at here is monarchy is inevitable. The idea and an inroad to this monarchical idea is having the father replaced by the son. And he wants to see, this is the whole reason he wanted to see Biden installed. Just clearly, transparently, obviously installed. And then this entire narrative built up around trying to make him seem competent and noble and all of this that was guaranteed to induce this Brezhnevian stagnation that would completely demoralize the Democrats. And he's been super consistent on this, that he's like, look, now you see the American system of government being personified in the best way possible. This doddering asshole of a man who's one of the least impressive people of all time, but has managed to work his way into the White House. This is the greatest condemnation of this system of government that could ever be manifested to you. And the only thing that would make it even better would be for him to be replaced by this obnoxious cop who is forced into a marriage with his son, who is the most degenerate, unimpressive, least qualified person to be president of all time. So you're getting that revival of the sense, the spirit of monarchy, passing power on from the father to his son, while also having it done in the most transparently corrupt and obviously like a condemnation of the system itself.
You know, it's interesting. Related to that conversation with Tucker and Jack Posobiec, where Tucker had asked him hypothetically, what do you think would have happened?
Yes, I was going to mention this.
The shooter not missed. And he said, well, a lot of things might have happened, but he suspected that Trump Jr. would probably take over the energy and the legacy of his dad and try to lead the movement forward.
Yes.
Which I think is probably right. I don't know who else it would be.
Right. There would have been obviously would have been a power struggle, but you can imagine that. Well, so like the fact that he's saying that, I know that them talking about that, given their closeness to the campaign and the people involved in everything, they're not just speculating. Like they understand the internal dynamics there and the people who are closest to Trump and what their instinct would be. I think this is great. So now, like, and Vance is it's well known that he's very good friends with Trump Jr. So you've essentially we're edging in that direction. We've now got the close friend of the son, with the son sort of in the background. Buy us another 8 years, and then interesting things may happen. Maybe 12 years. What's 12 years down the line? So Barron would be, what is he? 18?
So
Barron
30.
So he'd be 30. Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting timing. 4 years of Trump, 8 years of Vance. All right. Well, I've got one last thing here, and this is utterly disconnected from anything else that we've been talking about lately. But this guy here, Ashton Forbes, is probably the most educated person on remember the Malaysian flight that disappeared several years ago? He has probably done the most work on trying to figure out what it actually is. And I saw today that Elon was replying to some of his tweets. So he's on Elon's radar, which is very interesting. And Elon is signal boosting him. It could be innocent. It could be just he tweeted something and Elon thought it was interesting and replied to it, doesn't know anything else about him. But so he says, recipe for a missing Malaysian Airlines plane. Start with one Boeing 777 bound for China with 20 semiconductor engineers and 2 leaked United States military videos in perfect sync from 2 completely different angles. Add 487 pounds of extremely dangerous lithium-ion batteries next to the electronics bay assembled that day. Stir in a fire event supported by 19 witnesses and a China Times only reported mayday of the plane and attempting an emergency landing and disintegrating. Make sure not to watch your plane with your global persistent infrared surveillance satellite constellation that can track missiles. Pretend there's no radar tracking for a rogue aircraft despite being in range of at least 5 radars from 3 different countries when lost. Falsify some satellite pings and release them to independent investigators 10 weeks later to send the world on a misleading search into the South Indian Ocean. Make sure U.S. intelligence leaks to the media this narrative early. Watch and ensure there's no debris field that would otherwise be visible from space for days. Find a scientific study showing no acoustic detections during the time frame the plane had fuel anywhere along its supposed route. Sprinkle a few tiny pieces of debris on the wrong continent in Africa. Fabricate drift analysis contrary to the direction of the ocean currents to convince people it's normal, nothing washed ashore in Western Australia. Read Defense Intelligence Agency scientific papers on extracting energy from the vacuum, gravity waves, wormholes, negative energy propulsion, and teleportation. Finally, make sure the plane was never found 10 years later after the most expensive and extensive search in human history. Cook to taste. So these are the videos, and I'm dropping this here now because I'm thinking this may be something to dig into for the Schizo stream this weekend, this Friday in the King Pill Discord. These videos, I have now seen enough of this, and I've seen enough credible people who've come out and said this is both from a technology standpoint and from a videography standpoint. These are 100% real. These are actual real videos of the plane. And do with that what you will. There's no audio. Keep watching. Boop. One more time. I don't know what to do with that, but I know that it's real. We've talked, if you've been following me on Twitter, you've talked about, we've discussed like the disclosure of dark tech recently. I was on that space with Meta Prime. And yeah, there are, remember I mentioned at the beginning talking about Andreessen and Horowitz talking about how there's been like advanced theoretical physics that has been classified as a military secret, essentially. There have been dark military projects and yeah, there has been, we have no idea just what is going to be disclosed, except it's going to be mind-blowing. And we're not prepared for that. This is part of the motivation behind this move now by the counter-elite factions that we've been watching. Is that these sorts of things are going to be disclosed, and there's the stuff behind them is going to inevitably make it out, and the stakes could not possibly be bigger. That's why I keep saying this is not simply just like some tech CEOs who just want to grill. Like, yeah, they just want to grill. That is it. But it's not simply just like tech CEOs who just, hey, we're tired of not being able to do the things we want. And, this is just like some sort of cynical tax policy dispute or something like that. The stakes of warfare are I'm not even going to say they are going to change. They have already changed. And all of this stuff can't be kept behind the scenes. It's too explosive. It's going to make it out, and national interests are at stake. There's going to be a large revival in the sense of acting in favor of your own national interests, because other people are going to be acting in favor of their own national interests, dealing with some of the most explosive technological developments that have ever happened. So people are retreating to nationalism in a pragmatic sense from a perspective of military security. I don't know how to make it more clear than that. That's exactly what's happening here. Because I don't know the exact details of what's coming, but I've seen enough and heard enough, both publicly and privately, to understand the trajectory that we're on. That video has been these particular videos, Charlemagne, I've watched a bunch of different people who have gone into this, and some very credible people as well, who've also said this is 100% real. It is not faked. There are some specific artifacts in it that indicate that it is not faked. These videos are entirely real. And then I've also heard specifically from people who are in positions to know that the story that these are telling is real. The story that these videos are telling is real. The existence of this sort of technology and the ability and desire to implement it is real. So I'll see if I can find some good stuff on this. Ashton Forbes is the one who's done the most work on it, but it's not aliens. Definitely not aliens. But we'll if you guys are interested in the King Pill Discord on Friday night this week, we'll do a schizo stream, and we could talk about this stuff. And then someone was posting something in the Discord earlier about giants, so we might talk about giants as well. If that's something you want to be a part of, just join the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com, and do me a favor, hit the like button on your way out. I appreciate you guys showing up. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Subscribe to the channel, and one other thing. We're going to have a very significant interview here in the near future. You guys will enjoy it. So until then,